I had a little cancellation today, one of my in-person lessons, so I figured I'd make a real quick video. Before I get started, just want to talk about the Patreon. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed, doing some tele lessons with a couple of you guys. It's rewarding to see that it works, because I was a little worried that it'd be harder to translate what I do from doing it in person to doing it with someone over a video, but it's been working. So if you want to get one-on-one lessons with me over video, consider signing up for the Patreon. Also consider getting a deck from www.collageskateboards.com. What I want to talk to you guys about today is how I look at the skateboard, and what was the jumping off point for this was my over the video lesson with Anton Chisolm. You know, we were going over some specific things, and so I took out a deck and a Sharpie, and I made kind of an outline of the parts of the board, right? And it's really important for you guys that are trying to learn flip tricks, you guys that are trying to learn to control your board, to focus on seeing the board in its parts, because manipulating its parts is what's going to make you able to do certain tricks. So let's get into that. Now, I always think of the board vertically as three different cross sections, right? There's the center of the board, and that's going to be where you want your weight to sit if you're just trying to roll straight. Now, it's impossible for us to completely roll straight, and when you see someone rolling straight and as a beginner you think that they're so much better than you at stabilizing the board, it's actually because they're making tiny micro movements to keep the board straight. And that's something that you develop the ability to do over time as you get muscle memory and as you develop the musculature necessary to control your skateboard. Now, I'm goofy footed, so there's also going to be part number one, and I call this area number one because this is where most beginners and even expert skaters alike tend to lean with their weight, and that is the toe side edge of the board, right? So that's where the concave of your board is, assuming you have a board that's not flat, even though no board is completely flat unless there's some new shape that I'm unaware of. But this is where, when you put the pressure on your toes, it's going to cause the board to carve backside. And this is a problem area for a lot of beginners, because when you get started, you're going to place your weight on that part of the board because you're not used to balancing. And if you're not careful, this is going to make it harder for you to do all your tricks. It's going to make it impossible for you to roll straight. When you're trying to learn how to skate ramps, it's going to impede your ability to do so, because you're going to be carving backside, and it's going to make you carve and fall off of your board because you're not used to controlling it that way. So this is an area that you really have to be focused on not leaning into for those first couple years of skating. After a while, this will just come to you naturally, as I said, because you'll develop the musculature necessary to control your board, and you'll have muscle memory, so you'll be used to rolling around and pushing. The third area I want to talk about is the heel side edge of concave, and that's where if you lean your weight on your heels, it's going to cause you to turn front side. And this area creates different problems, because a lot of skaters, when they're leaning on this edge of the board, they forget that what makes this so difficult is that when you're carving front side, when you're turning front side, you're kind of turning blindly. And so they forget that if you're carving front side, you should be turning your head and shoulders front side as well, just to make it easier, to make it feel like you're not turning backwards. So now I want to talk about some other areas of the board, and I'm going to flip over and show you the board so that I can make it easier for you guys to understand. So now I made some markings on the grip tape of my board, and these are the areas that are most important as far as I'm concerned, the ones that I teach when I'm teaching people how to skate, and the ones that I've outlined in some of my videos. I have lined out those three sections that I talked about. So for a goofy footed skater like me, this is going to be area 1, this is going to be area 2, this is going to be area 3, the front side area, right? Now these are flip trick areas here. So this is going to be a kickflip area, the place where you're concerned for a general kickflip, right? This is going to be your heel flip area right over here. So when I started, I would have my heel all the way up here, my foot hanging off. That was the only way I could make it work. Now I'm about here, but this is what you should be paying attention to if you're trying to get your heel flips down, right? And now this back area, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important area, because this is where most people have issues when it comes to ollies and flip tricks, shove-its and things like that, right? So I've got this little circle here on the tail. and I call that the ollie box. I know that it's a circle and that doesn't sound intuitive, but I make it a circle because it's the ball of your foot that's supposed to be pressing there. So a lot of you guys are allowing your heels to be down on the board when you do your tricks, and that's why you can't generate enough power, because there's a kinetic chain that you use when you skate, and if you don't use it properly, you're not going to get as much power as you can generate. Now, you guys might think that skating is a unique thing and that we're all individuals. Well, we're not. It's simple physiology. We all have bodies that work within certain tolerances, and we all learn the same basic things to be able to manipulate an inanimate object like a skateboard. So if your toes are in this area of the board, I find that it gives me the proper leverage, and that's why I'm able to do some of those like shoulder height nose slides and, you know, above waist height 50-50s and crooked grinds and tail slides that I'm able to do, leveraging this point of the board as where I pop. It makes it easier to get the board to the ground, and I'm also kicking my foot backwards instead of straight down so that I can create movement, and it allows me to drag the board up as I lift my knees towards my chest. Now, these other two areas here, these are gonna be the areas that create problems for some of you guys. Like when people are learning how to pop shove it, when you're shoveting, you're gonna have your toes hanging over this edge so that you can mimic your hands grabbing the edge of the tail. But when you start trying pop shove it's, that movement doesn't transfer. The movement does transfer, I'm sorry, but your foot placement can't, because you need to place your back foot in that ollie area and then create that scooping motion. I like to imagine that I'm digging a hole in the ground when I do a proper pop shove it. And this back area is going to be similar. You don't use it as much unless you're learning how to do frontside 180s, right? When you're learning how to do frontside 180s, you create the motion in your shoulders, and then it transfers down into your hips, and then finally into your foot. And having your foot back here in this area just makes it easier for you to transfer that motion into the board. But once you learn to do proper frontside 180s, you're gonna place your foot in that ollie box the same way that I do, and the same way that most people whose frontside 180s you're watching do them. The same is true for backside 180s. You're gonna place your foot initially in that backside toe area, and then you're gonna move it later. But you really wanna be focused on keeping your foot in that center area so that you can create as much power as possible. And then when you get to tricks like pressure flips, your pressure flip is going to mostly involve this area here. You're gonna angle your foot slightly. If you guys have watched my pressure flip video, I go over the entire thing. And also for tray flips, varial flips, not necessarily backside flips, because the rotation of a backside flip comes mainly from your shoulders. But you're gonna be using both of these areas in conjunction with one another to create most of your tricks. So that's about it. I just wanted to break down those areas of the board for you guys, because when I was doing that over video lesson with Antoine, breaking that down seemed to help him out a lot, and it gave me the idea to make this video. If you guys start using these points on the board, it'll really help out. The first person that I ever saw do something like this, a version of this, was a friend of mine named Zack Glenn. And Zack had his board marked in this way every deck that he skated, and he was amazing. Like, this guy was doing switch flip back lips on flat bars back in like 2003. Like 2003. Nobody was doing tricks like that, you know? And I started to think of the areas of my deck in that same fashion. Although I don't mark it down, whenever I'm rolling up to tricks, whenever I'm attempting tricks, I'm thinking of these little areas of the board, and it really does help me out. So hopefully this helps you guys out too. Thank you guys for watching. Consider joining the Patreon. Like I said, at the $25 a month tier, I do offer those video lessons. I have one coming up on Wednesday with David K. And Anton Chisolm has had a couple of them at this point. And then the other tiers, I do patron only Q&As starting at $1. And yeah, people get to ask me specific questions and I answer them, which I don't do in the comments anymore because the volume is just too much for me to handle. Also, if you want to support in another way, consider going to www.collageskateboards.com and picking up a deck. That's all I got. I'm going to go and skate. See, I'm at the skate park right now. I had a lesson, it was canceled, so I'm gonna enjoy my own time. Peace.